The Tu-22M3 supersonic bomber is one of the jewels in the Russian Air Force's collective crown. It's been hailed as the carrier killer by Moscow, which believes the Soviet-era aircraft is strong enough to take out some of the largest ships in the world. Yet, it can't handle a drone, and we know that because a Ukrainian drone operator just obliterated Russia's carrier killer, and there was nothing Russian President Vladimir Putin could do about it. RBC Ukraine was among the first to report on Ukraine's impressive drone strike. On April 9, it shared comments made by Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrskyi. As is so often the case, Syrskyi didn't provide too many details. A few days ago, our successful actions destroyed the long-range bomber Tu-22M3, he told the media. Syrskyi also confirmed that it was a Ukrainian drone that did the damage, with the plane being targeted almost as soon as it had landed. That leads to some interesting conclusions. Russia may have sent the Tu-22M3 out on one of the many missile strikes Putin has conducted against Ukraine, but this time Ukraine must have tracked the aircraft, either before or in the immediate aftermath of the Russian attack, all the way back to its airfield. There, the drone struck, and in a matter of minutes, the Tu-22M3's pilot would have gone from being happy about another mission completed to seeing his aircraft go up in flames right in front of his eyes. It's worth noting that Syrskyi's claims haven't been officially verified yet, according to the Kyiv Independent. However, assuming he's telling the truth, Ukraine's daring drone strike has just taken out an aircraft that cost Russia around $100 million to build. The Tu-22M3 is also one of the key components of Russia's Air Force, says the outlet. But beyond these minor details, Syrskyi didn't confirm where the drone attack took place or the specific date of the strike. Furthermore, the Kyiv Independent says that neither Ukraine nor Russia have confirmed a successful strike against a Russian aircraft in April. But if Syrskyi is indeed telling the truth, why does taking out a Tu-22M3 mean so much? Take a closer look at the aircraft specifications. The Tu-22M, which is codenamed Backfire by NATO, took its maiden flight in 1969. Yes, the plane is yet another of the Soviet-era relics that Putin has relied on to hurt Ukraine. But it's a relic that's far more effective than many of the ancient tanks and artillery units Russia has poured into Ukraine. Air Force Technology describes the aircraft as a strategic bomber and maritime strike aircraft, meaning it has a dual purpose that allows it to hit targets on land or at sea. It's also crewed by 4 people. The Tu-22M3 variant that Ukraine destroyed with its drones is the most modern version of the aircraft. The original Tu-22M itself was based on the design of Russia's much older Tu-22. Though it took its first flight in the late 1960s, the plane didn't see its first combat deployment until Russia's war with Afghanistan between 1987 and 1989. The Tu-22M3 came later, with that variant first seeing use in 1995 when Russia was fighting against Chechnya. Army Recognition provides more details, noting that the original Tu-22 was the first supersonic bomber the Soviet Union ever produced, making it one of Russia's earlier aircraft capable of breaking the speed of sound. The Tu-22M3 variant of the plane is so revered in Russia because of its intelligent design, with Army Recognition claiming that it offers the perfect configuration of its airframe and developed high-lift devices. The aircraft features variable sweep wings, which are wings that can change their angle of sweep in flight to allow for ideal aerodynamic performance based on changing conditions. In the Tu-22M3's case, that sweep can change from 20 to 65 degrees. As for the 4 crew members, they're divided into a pair of teams. 2 pilots sit up front in the forward cabin, where they're supported by a navigator and weapons operator stationed in the aircraft's rear. All cabins have removable metal screens, designed to mitigate the impact of a nuclear blast, with each crew member also having an ejector seat that allows them to make a quick escape as long as the aircraft is traveling at 80 miles per hour or more. Propulsion is enabled by a pair of NK-25 bypass turbojet engines, which are equipped with afterburners and horizontal wedge air scoops. This double-engine design essentially provides the Tu-22M3 with a backup plane if something goes wrong during a mission. The plane is just as capable of flying with one engine, albeit at reduced speed, as it is with two, meaning an engine failure doesn't necessarily result in the loss of the plane. The Tu-22M3 also has a surprisingly advanced navigation system given how old the strategic bomber is. It's equipped with radar and an optical bomb sight, the latter of which beams a signal straight to a TV channel the plane's navigator can view. It also has an automatic aircraft flight control system that, when combined with other navigational features and the aircraft's missile armament control system, ensures that navigation, targeting and piloting problems are minimized. Add a series of electronic warfare countermeasures to that package, including radar reconnaissance and countermeasure devices, plus chaff and flare dispensers, and you get a plane that's designed as much with defense in mind as attack. However, it's the Tu-22M3's attacking capabilities that make destroying one with a drone such a massive victory for Ukraine. Each Tu-22M3 comes equipped with a trio of Kh-22M missiles it can use to destroy targets on land or at sea. One of those missiles is placed in a bomb bay located under the plane's fuselage, with the other two held in underwing stations. On top of the Kh-22Ms, the plane also carries 6 hypersonic anti-ship and anti-radiation missiles, which are also arranged in the fuselage. If the plane is designated for carrying bombs, it can either hold 69 of Russia's Fab 250s, which are 250-pound dumb munitions, or 8 of its Fab 1500s, which weigh 1,500 pounds. If those bombs sound familiar, it's because they're the munitions Russia has been converting into the devastating glide bombs it's using to pelt Ukraine cities. That leads to another major reason why this drone strike means so much to Ukraine. Not only has it taken out one of the best bombers in Russia's aerial arsenal, but it's also taken a massive bite out of Putin's ability to destroy its infrastructure from the skies. Let's hone back in on the Kh-22M for a moment. The missile measures almost 37 feet and stands as one of the Soviet Union's crowning missile achievements, according to Airpra. Its clever design gives it a streamlined shape that minimizes aerodynamic drag, allowing the missile to reach speeds of almost Mach 5 when that design is combined with its liquid-fueled rocket engine. It's a long-range missile too. The Kh-22 can travel up to 372 miles, which is a large enough distance for Russia to launch it from behind the Ukraine war's front lines and still hit critical targets in cities like Kyiv and Kharkiv. Russia also has the option of loading it with different kinds of warheads, including conventional high-explosive warheads and, if the situation calls for it, nuclear warheads that deliver 1 megaton of explosive power. The Kh-22 can also be switched between low and high altitude modes, with the latter allowing it to climb up to 89,000 feet, placing it well above the range of many of Ukraine's air defenses. It's fast in low altitude mode too, reaching speeds of up to Mach 3.5, though that speed comes with the sacrifice of travelling at a ceiling of 39,000 feet. Why does all of this matter? As the Kyiv Independent points out in its report on Ukraine's drone strike against the Tu-22M3, Russia has been using the Kh-22 to bombard Ukrainian cities. The missile's clever design and high speed make it extremely difficult for air defenses to track and destroy, meaning it's among the most reliable missiles Russia can use to hit Ukrainian ground targets. One less Tu-22M3 in the skies could mean that Russia loses the ability to launch dozens of its Kh-22s over the next few months. And it gets worse for Putin. Russia has been converting its Fab dumb bombs into glide bombs it uses to attack Ukraine, and these glide bombs are remarkably easy for Russia to make. All it needs is a special glide kit, which costs between $20,000 and $30,000, and it gets a previously dumb bomb that can be launched from behind the front lines. Those bombs still aren't precision weapons, but the Russian glide kits include satellite navigation systems that allow them to glide, hence the name, to the general region of a target. They're cheap and destructive, which is the perfect combination for Russia. The latter quality makes up for the lack of precision, with Russia being more than happy if a glide bomb touches down in the approximate region of a target because it knows that the bomb will do damage. How much damage? For comparison, a Fab 1500, which the Tu-22M3 can carry, weighs about 1.5 tons. That amounts to around 1,322 pounds of explosives, plus the weight of the bomb itself. A single Russian 152mm artillery shell only carries about 14 pounds of explosive, so a Fab 1500 glide bomb dropped by a Tu-22M3 packs over 94 times the explosive punch that an artillery round offers. That's why Russia has been using them so extensively. By January 9, Ukraine claimed that Russia had dropped 51,000 of its glide bombs onto Ukrainian cities and infrastructure. That amounts to around 1,457 bombs per month, though the frequency of Russian attacks intensified in 2024. By taking out a Tu-22M3, Ukraine has just deprived Russia of an aircraft capable of potentially carrying and launching dozens of these terrifying bombs at once. That won't eliminate the glide bomb threat. Russia still has a good number of planes ready to fire. However, losing such a versatile aircraft capable of firing missiles and glide bombs means that Putin will be forced to relieve some of the pressure he's attempting to exert on Ukraine. And Ukraine knows it. The April 9 reports of a Ukrainian drone operator taking out a Tu-22M3 may be among the most impressive, but it's far from the first. In fact, Ukraine has launched a campaign against this specific Russian aircraft that's seen it take out several Tu-22M3s in the past. For instance, April 2024 saw Ukrainian anti-aircraft units shoot down one of the Russian bombers for the first time. The bomber ended up crashing in the Stavropol Krai region of Russia following Putin's decision to launch an airstrike on Ukraine's Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. Of course, Russia denied that Ukraine had shot the plane out of the skies. Its defense ministry said that the Tu-22M3 crashed because of a technical malfunction as it returned to its base, leading to the death of a pilot and one crew member going missing. The plane's other two crew members supposedly evacuated safely via their ejector seats. Ukraine sang a much different tune. It claimed that it managed to shoot down the Russian bomber using an S-200 anti-air system that's even older than the plane it destroyed, having first been deployed during the 1960s. Most think that the S-200 is obsolete. Ukraine proved that it wasn't. For the first time, the anti-aircraft missile units of the Ukrainian Air Force, in cooperation with Ukraine's main Directorate of Intelligence, destroyed a Tu-22M3 long-range strategic bomber, said Air Force Commander Mykola Oleksandr at the time. He also made it a point to note that the plane carries the Kh-22 missile, emphasizing how damaging that missile has been to Ukraine since Putin launched his invasion. Ukraine's drone operators just marked the first anniversary of shooting down a Tu-22M3 by taking out another of the dangerous bombers. And there's more. On July 30, 2024, the Kyiv Independent reported that Ukraine launched an incredible long-range attack against the Olenya airfield in Russia's Murmansk Oblast. The result? A pair of Tu-22M3 bombers were damaged. This strike followed one that saw Ukraine hit another of the bombers at an airfield a staggering 1,118 miles north of Ukraine's border with Russia. Ukraine's military intelligence spokesperson, Andriy Yusov, said that one of the Tu-22M3s was undergoing restoration at Olenya before it was hit. That restoration had already taken several months to complete, meaning Ukraine added even more time to the Russian effort to get that bomber up in the air. Notably, the strike took place before the US granted permission to use its long-range missiles to attack Russia on its own territory, suggesting this was yet another example of Ukraine making brilliant use of its drones. Russia has lost even more of the bombers since. April 2nd saw Russia report that one of its Tu-22M3s had crashed in Siberia due to another technical malfunction. This time, it seems unlikely that Ukraine would have been able to do the damage. The bomber was 2,500 miles away from the border Ukraine shares with Russia at the time. Nevertheless, it's another Tu-22M3 down. And all of that leads to another question. What does Ukraine's campaign against Russia's Tu-22M3s mean for Putin and his forces? For one, Ukraine is slowly whittling away at Russia's stockpiles of one of its most important bombers. Defense Express reports that Russia is believed to have 57 Tu-22M3s, at least on paper. The strikes discussed so far have taken out at least 4 of them, with another now lying in tatters in the Siberian wilderness. That's 5 bombers that could have been firing Kh-22 missiles and glide bombs at Ukraine that no longer exist. The National Security Journal reinforces this point, stating that Russia has lost 10% of its Tu-22M3 arsenal. The problem now for Russia lies in the aircraft's origins. Like so much of the equipment Putin is using in Ukraine, the Tu-22M3 comes from the Soviet era. That means it's old. Not ineffective, but as the Siberia crash proved, the bombers that Putin has left will certainly be nearing the end of their combat lives. Technical errors are likely to become more common as the Ukraine war drags on, and the reality Putin must face is that he's unlikely to be able to keep all of his Tu-22M3s in the skies. He can't. He'll already be running out of spare parts his forces can use to maintain the bombers, forcing many to be grounded. Add to that the bombers that Ukraine is taking out with drones and anti-aircraft strikes, and you get an ever-dwindling supply of one of Putin's most effective weapons. Russia's glide bomb campaigns will suffer, and the same goes for its cruise missile launches against Ukraine. With each Tu-22M3 that's taken out of commission, Ukraine relieves Russian pressure on some of its most targeted cities. But that's not all that Ukraine has achieved. Each Tu-22M3 cost Russia around $100 million to build, but that's not counting the cruise missiles and FAB bombs that are loaded into the aircraft. FAB bombs are cheap and plentiful, which is why Russia is converting so many into glide bombs. However, each Kh-22 missile cost around $1 million. Assuming each Tu-22M3 Ukraine takes out is carrying its maximum capacity of 3 of these missiles, that means you can add another $3 million to the cost Putin incurs with each successful strike. And given that there are at least 5 destroyed Tu-22M3s to think about, that adds up to $515 million Ukraine strikes have cost Russia over the last year. Putin can't afford to absorb these types of losses. By the end of 2024, he'd already spent $200 billion on an invasion that was only supposed to last a week, with some estimates suggesting he might be spending around $500 million to $1 billion per day on the war. Whichever numbers are correct, Russia still can't simply absorb the loss of over $500 million of hardware. It also especially can't absorb those losses when each Tu-22M3 taken out of the skies means he can't cause equivalent damage to Ukraine. There's also the defensive aspect to consider. Ukraine's assaults on Russia's Tu-22M3s are just a microcosm of a wider campaign against the aerial prowess of Putin's forces. When it comes to the bomber itself, every shot against Putin's ability to launch glide bombs and cruise missiles at Ukraine creates an opportunity for Ukraine to use its own aerial assets, ranging from drones to the F-16s it's received from its Western partners, as attacking assets rather than defensive ones. Ukraine has been targeting even more airfields over the last few weeks too. April 9 saw it batter several key installations across Crimea with 158 drones, including a military airfield in Mozdok that's home to several of Russia's MiG-31K aircraft that are capable of firing hypersonic missiles. About a month ago, Ukraine devastated the Engels airfield, another base from which Putin was launching glide bombs and missiles using his bomber fleet. Every one of these attacks, which also often targets Russia's anti-air defenses, weakens Putin's air force while creating openings for Ukraine to exploit. Perhaps that's why it was able to hit a Tu-22M3 with a drone. That attack may not have been possible during the first couple of years of the war. However, as Ukraine has whittled away at Russia's air force, it's created new pathways for its drones and missiles to exploit. So, the April bomber destruction is unlikely to be a one-off. What may be developing here is the start of a more concerted campaign through which Ukraine finally takes out the key bombers that have been devastating its cities for so long. Ukraine's destruction of a Tu-22M3 with a drone may seem like a single attack against a Russian asset. Putin will know it means much more. It shows that Ukraine's focus on his country's aerial assets is paying off, opening the door for Ukraine to destroy more of his most valuable weapons in the future. But what do you think about Ukraine's impressive drone strike? How much of an impact does taking a Tu-22M3 out of the skies have on the Ukraine war? Will we see more of these powerful bombers get destroyed in the coming months? Share your thoughts in the comments, and remember to subscribe to The Military Show for more videos about how Ukraine is pushing Putin's invasion back onto Russia. We're an independent source of up-to-date information about military affairs around the globe and very much appreciate your support.